Welcome back to Hidden Histories, the podcast where we dive into the overlooked stories of communities in history. I'm Bella, your host, and today we're focusing on the critical but often overlooked contributions of Mexicans and Mexican Americans in World War II. This is a chapter of history that highlights both incredible sacrifice and the complex reality of discrimination. With me today are two experts, Avi and Emilee, who will help bring this important topic to light. Welcome, Avi and Emilee.
Thanks for having us, Bella.
Excited to be here and discuss this vital topic.
I'm so glad to have both of you here. Let's dive right in because there's so much to unpack. While we often hear about the great victories and contributions of American soldiers, there is a crucial aspect of the war that involves Mexican Americans that's not always discussed. So, let's start with the treatment of Mexicans and Mexican Americans during this time. Avi, let's start with you. Can you help set the stage by talking about the treatment of Mexicans and Mexican Americans both at home and in the military during World War II?
Absolutely. The treatment of Mexicans and Mexican Americans during World War II was a paradox in many ways. On one hand, they were called to serve their country in the war effort. But on the other hand, they faced discrimination, segregation, and outright racism. For instance, in the military, Mexican Americans often served in segregated units, and they were not always given the same opportunities as their white counterparts. The Zoot Suit riots of 1943 are one of the most vivid examples of the racial tensions of the time. Mexican American youth were harassed and attacked by servicemen, despite their involvement in the war effort. And beyond the military, they were also treated as second-class citizens in many parts of their country. This is especially true for those living in the southwest of California, where anti-Mexican sentiment was high.
That's heartbreaking, especially considering how many of them were actually serving in the military. Emilee, can you speak to how this mistreatment influenced their experiences? Did it have any long-term impact on Mexican Americans after the war?
For sure, Bella. While military service allowed many Mexican Americans to gain a sense of pride and duty, it didn't immediately solve the broader issue of discrimination. However, many Mexican Americans returned home with a new sense of empowerment. They had served their country, and despite the racism they faced, they had shown their courage and loyalty. This experience laid the groundwork for the post-Civil War rights movement. You saw the beginning of efforts to challenge segregation in schools and housing, and to fight for better working conditions, especially in California's agricultural fields. These were the early steps that would lead to more significant civil rights victories later on.
That's really interesting. So, while the war itself didn't erase the challenges they faced, it gave Mexican Americans a sense of unity and pride that would push them to advocate for better rights. Now, let's pivot to the next part of this discussion. Even though many of these individuals faced hardship, they still made the incredible contributions to the war effort. Emilee, can you talk us through some of those key contributions?
Wait, this video is sponsored by Bracero Banking.
Ever wonder where your paycheck went? So do we. At Bracero Banking, we take care of your hard-earned money by deducting fees you didn't know existed. Weekend deductions, service fees, and even charges for bad weather. It's all part of the Bracero Banking experience. Sign up today and watch your money vanish before your eyes.
The contributions of Mexican Americans and Mexicans were truly remarkable. One of the most notable was the formation of the 201st Mexican First Squadron, also known as the Aztec Eagles. This group of Mexican pilots, part of the Mexican Air Force, flew combat missions alongside American forces in the Philippines. Despite their smaller numbers, they made a significant impact and were an integral part of the Pacific theater. The bravery and skill of the Aztec Eagles helped solidify their place in history, but this was just one example.
Wow, I had no idea about the Aztec Eagles. What other contributions did they make, especially in terms of supporting the U.S. military?
Well, alongside the combat pilots, there were also Mexican Americans who served in ground forces like the U.S. Army and Marines. Over 500,000 Mexican Americans served in the military during the war, and their efforts spanned every branch of service. The Bracero program was another huge contribution that people often overlook. This program brought Mexican laborers to the United States to fill agricultural and industrial jobs while American workers were away fighting. Without these workers, the U.S. would have struggled to maintain its wartime production. The contributions were both on the front lines and on the home front.
Yes, And we can't forget the Medal of Honor recipients. Several Mexican American soldiers were awarded the highest military honor for their acts of bravery during World War II. One notable figure is Private First Class Guy Gabaldon, who, despite being only a teenager, became famous for his ability to convince over 1,000 Japanese soldiers to surrender, saving countless lives. He was awarded the Navy Cross for his bravery. It's stories like his that show the incredible heroism that went unnoticed for far too long.
It's amazing how many of these stories are left untold. The Aztec Eagles, the Bracero program, and these brave soldiers like Guy Gabaldon really showcase the depth of the Mexican and Mexican-American involvement in the war effort. But I think one of the most important things to talk about is how the war affected Mexico itself. Avi, can you walk us through Mexico's role in the war?
Of course. Mexico had a unique role in the war. Officially, Mexico declared war on the Axis powers in 1942, shortly after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. This decision came with significant political and economic ramifications. While Mexico did not send large numbers of combat troops abroad, they did provide strategic support. They allowed American forces to use Mexican territory to train and stage operations, and they provided vital resources like oil. More intensely, Mexico also sent volunteers to fight in the war. The 201st Mexican Air Force Squadron, as we mentioned, was a prime example of this cooperation.
I didn't realize Mexico played such a vital role in supporting the war effort. What were the reactions from Mexicans living in the U.S. at the time? Were they supportive of the war?
Yes, many Mexicans in the U.S. were highly supportive of the war, as they saw it as an opportunity to prove their loyalty to the country. There were also mixed feelings, though, because of the discrimination they faced. For instance, many Mexican American families had sons who served in the war, but they also had to contend with the constant prejudice back home. However, they viewed their service as a step toward greater acceptance and recognition in the American society. Their voices were often not heard as much as those of other American communities, but their pride and sense of duty were palpable.
It sounds like, despite the challenges, both Mexico and Mexican Americans were determined to contribute to the war effort and prove their value. What lasting effects did their service have, though? Did it lead to any changes in the treatment of Mexican Americans?
While the post-war period didn't immediately erase the racial tensions, it did set the stage for the civil rights movement. Mexican Americans, armed with the experience of military service and the recognition they earned, started to push for better rights. Many were involved in labor movements, and the awareness of their contribution in the war gave them a platform to demand equality and to end segregation.
That's powerful. So even though they faced so much adversity, the experience of serving in World War II became a catalyst for the civil rights struggles that would follow. Well, this has been an incredible discussion, Avi, Emilee. Thank you so much for your insights and for shedding light on this often overlooked part of history.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Hidden Histories. Today we discussed the vital yet often overlooked contributions of Mexicans and Mexican Americans during World War II. Their bravery, perseverance, and sacrifice not only played an essential role in the war effort, but also laid the groundwork for social change in the years that followed. While history may have overlooked their stories, we hope that this episode has shined a light on the important impact they had and continue to have in shaping the future. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a fun fact that you might not know. Did you know that the famous Mexican American actor and activist Ricardo Montalban, who starred in films like Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and was also a U.S. Army veteran, Montalban served in World War II as a part of the United States Army in the Pacific Theater, and his experiences in the war had a profound impact on his later activism and career. So some of Hollywood's most iconic stars were shaped by the same struggles and sacrifices as the soldiers we discussed today. It's these stories that remind us of how interconnected history is and how much we can learn by looking beyond the surface. I encourage you all to keep exploring the untold stories of those who have been overlooked by mainstream history because they are the ones who truly shape our worlds. And with that, we come to the end of today's episode. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. We've got a lot more on hidden histories to cover, and we can't wait to share their stories with you. Share this episode with your friends and family, and let's keep the conversation going about the real heroes of history. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Say bye!
Bye.
This video is sponsored by Bracero Banking.
Ever wonder where your paycheck went? So do we. What are you laughing?
We have like 2 minutes.
What are you laughing?
Banking.
Oh no. Okay, that was one mess up. Chill out.